la 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da da ya da da ya na na ya na 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 ya da 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 ya la 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 ya na 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 ya na da 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 la 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 da 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 ya da ya da 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 ya da 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 da. A good vach, a good week, and a good Chodesh, a good month. We are now entering, it is Rosh Chodesh, it begins tonight. And the new Hebrew month of Sivan has commenced. I love Sivan. This is the best month of all. This is the month in which the Torah was given. What a joy, what a blessing, what an amazing time we're entering. Next Thursday, this Thursday night, just in a few days, we'll be celebrating Shavuos, which commemorates the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. I heard something beautiful tonight. If you think about, I heard it from my friend Ari Goldner, I'm not sure where he heard it, but if you think about the four-letter name of God, which we spell Yud, right, and that's also the number 10, Hey, which is a letter which is also the number 5, Vav, which is also the number 6, and Hey, which is also the number 5, right? So those add up to 26. That's why 26 is a number always associated with God and with God's name. But it also, these four letters, right? There's so much in a name, a person's name. It's like every set of parents, when they name a child, has a little bit of prophecy, right? Because names carry so much. And what could carry more than God's name? So if you look at God's name, it's this idea that the Yud, the smallest letter of all, the humblest letter of all, also happens to be 10, the 10 commandments. The world was created with 10 utterances. And it's understood that the Yud is this glimpse into the higher world, the world above, the world that God occupies and from which he sent, this force of creativity and creation that is constantly flowing into our world and giving it life, right? In the same way that when you have a dream, there are characters in your dream. If you wake up and the dream ends, so they all go poof, they all vanish, right? So we're living in this dream that God is continuously having and continuously animating. If at any time God decided, you know what, I've had it with that world, it would all just vanish. So the Yud is the point of origin. The Hey, the 5, that represents the 5 fingers, right? We talk about the 5 fingers of God in the Haggadah, but it's this idea that the hand of God is a hand of generosity, and it's sending forth, right, this energy, this life-giving force from the Yud, right, with this great love of God into our world. And it travels through the Vav, right? The Vav, the letter Vav is just like a thin line. And it's thought of like a tube. Ari, my friend who I heard this from, likened it to a glass blower's tube, right? So the glass blower has that long pipe, so it's cool enough that even though there's a hot glass on the other end, he doesn't burn his lips when he sends air into it. But so, God has to have this kind of long tube because, if we were in the presence of God, we would be nullified, right? We could not be ourselves. We could not be humans in the presence of God. We'd just be utterly overwhelmed by it. And so God is able to send that life-giving, godly energy through, this is very Kabbalistic, mystical, but this idea that through a chain of emanations, God is able to send that energy from his world, where God is everywhere and openly revealed, and through this chain of emanations to a world where God's presence is hidden. And then the final hey of God's name is us, right? We receive that life-giving energy and bring it into ourselves, and God willing, we turn that energy into righteousness, into good deeds, into mitzvahs, into loving and caring for one another, into creativity, into all the good things that we humans can do when we muster up the courage and the strength to do good things rather than just give in to our urges. All right, let's open a new tractate of the Talmud tonight. This is Tractate Gittin, the 19th volume of the Talmud. And these are the laws of divorce. Now, the next tractate after this, the 20th volume, is Kiddushin, which are the laws of marriage. And as we mentioned yesterday at the Siyum for the previous tractate, Sota, we talked about why, if you're going to talk about, divorce and marriage, you might think that the Talmud would first go into the laws of marriage and then into the laws of divorce. But one of the reasons why this is not so, Nina actually spoke one of the reasons that when people enter marriage, right, they should know what they're getting into and what it is that they're committing to and what would be on the other side if it doesn't work out. And a different view is that, we hope that divorce does not follow marriage, right? Most marriages will not end divorce, God willing. In modern times, maybe things have gotten a little out of control, but the general idea, traditionally was that the vast majority of marriages will work out, and God forbid it doesn't work out. So you go through a divorce, the husband gives the wife a get, which is what creates the divorce, and then Kiddushin should follow, right? So if a couple is not able to make it work, then God willing, they will find their soulmates and have a successful second marriage. And so it's a joy that Kiddushin would follow Gittin. Okay. It's actually a short daf tonight. That's why I didn't mind taking a little digression right at the opening. But our first daf, page 2, every tractate begins on page 2, begins with the first Mishna. And just something to keep in mind as we work our way through this tractate is the bill of divorce that a husband gives a wife to end the marriage under Jewish law is one of those documents that is not just evidence of the divorce, it creates the divorce, right? And that's a very important distinction. It's not just a bill which is like a receipt, as it were, or just evidence of a fact that a divorce happened, but rather the paper itself, the writing and giving into the wife's hand, or in some cases it can be done through an agent, but it's that transfer of the get, the bill of divorce, from the husband to the wife that creates the divorce, or that ends the marriage and thus creates the divorce. But it's one of these bills that in the same idea that when you say I promise, that's a declarative statement, right? You didn't just describe some other condition that you created a different way. When you say you promise, you created the condition. And likewise, the bill of divorce creates the divorce. All right. 2a, here in Tractate Gittin, Mishnah number 1 of chapter 1. An agent who brings a bill of divorce, a get, from a husband to his wife from a country overseas, i.e. from outside of the land of Israel to the land of Israel, is required to state the following formula when he hands over the bill of divorce. He has to say, this bill of divorce was written in my presence and it was signed in my presence. Rabban Gamliel says, even one who brings a bill of divorce from Rechem or from Cheger, which are on the periphery of the land of Israel, must make this declaration. Rabbi Eliezer says, even one who brings a bill of divorce from the village of Ludim to Lod must also make this declaration, despite the fact that these places are only a short distance apart. And the reason is that the village of Ludim was not part of the main area settled by Jews in the land of Israel. And the rabbis say that one is required to say, it was written in my presence and it was signed in my presence, only if he brings a bill of divorce from a country overseas to the land of Israel. And the same applies to one who delivers a bill of divorce from Eretz Yisroel, the land of Israel, to a country overseas. And likewise, an agent who brings a bill of divorce from one region to another region within the overseas countries is also required to say, it was written in my presence and it was signed in my presence. And Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel says this law applies not only to an agent who brings a bill of divorce from one country to another, but even to one who takes it from one district to another district in the same country. And Rabbi Yehuda says, with regard to the borders of Eretz Yisroel, from Rechem eastward is considered to be part of the overseas country, and Rechem itself is like east of Eretz Yisroel, i.e. it is considered outside of Eretz Yisroel. And from Ashkelon southward is outside of Eretz Yisroel, and Ashkelon itself is like south of Israel, meaning it's considered outside of Israel for this law. And likewise, from Akko northward is outside of Eretz Yisroel, and Akko itself is like north of Eretz Yisroel. And Rabbi Meir says Akko is like Eretz Yisroel with regard to the laws of the bill of divorce. And one who brings a bill of divorce from one place to another within Eretz Yisroel is not required to say, it was written in my presence and it was signed in my presence. And if there are those who contest it, i.e. if the husband objects by saying that the bill of divorce is a forgery, it should be ratified through its signatories. The court must authenticate the signatures of the witnesses on the bill of divorce in order to ratify the document if it is challenged. That is the Mishnah, first Mishnah. As always with the Talmud, right? And the way that Rabbis Asi and Ashi arranged it, and really following the Mishnah, which Rebbe arranged, you might have thought that when we're getting into the subject of the bill of divorce, the first Mishnah would be, what are the elements of a bill of divorce? What must it say? How must it be written? Where shall it be written? Etc. But they go right away to a kind of a more advanced topic that in the case of a bill of divorce that is going from a husband who is overseas to a wife who's in Israel or vice versa, the agent who's bringing it has to state this declaration that it was written and signed in my presence. But that's the way they always do it. They jump right into the middle of the topic, and later we'll get to the more basic elements. And in this way, when Torah scholars were discussing these laws with other Torah scholars, they would be immediately engaged into the underlying issues in a way that would just spark a good discussion, right, among the Torah scholars. And of course, this does raise a bunch of really interesting questions. If this is creating the divorce, shouldn't we require that the husband gives it to his wife personally into her hand? Shouldn't they have to have that one last meeting before the divorce happens? But if you think about the realities, especially of the ancient world, one of the kinds of divorces that was created not because a husband and wife stopped loving each other, couldn't make it work, but rather because a husband was going to war as a soldier, and there was the risk that he would fall in battle and his body would not be found. Sometimes it was just tremendous losses. Sometimes it happened at sea. The body's not found, and a soldier goes missing. And then he really is dead, but there's no proof that he's dead. And so, the wife is... The candle? Thank you. Let's light up the darkness. And so the wife would be left in agunah, right? She'd be a stranded wife who could never remarry. So that was one of the reasons that sometimes they would create a divorce because of a contingency like that. At any rate, let's now get into the Gemara on Mishnah number 1 of chapter 1. Now, the Mishnah teaches that one who brings a bill of divorce from a country overseas to the land of Israel must say, it was written in my presence and it was signed in my presence. So the Gemara asks, what is the reason for the declaration? Why must the agent say this? So Rabbah says, and now we're on page 2b, it is because the people who live overseas are not experts in writing a bill of divorce for her sake. It's not that we're concerned that they don't have a scribe there who can properly write the words of this document. And another thing to recall, by the way, is in the ancient world, most people, first of all, they didn't know how to read. Jews were a much more literate group than most groups on earth, because it was a commandment on the whole population to learn, right? To learn and to study and to do what we're doing. And so many more were literate. But even though people were literate, very few people ever had reason to enter into a written contract, right? Most business was done on a handshake. And the proliferation of paperwork and fine print and contracts for everything, and terms of agreement and terms of service, and the things we had, the box you check every time you open a new app on your phone without ever even thinking what it is that I'm signing on to. So the ancient world wasn't like that, right? There were much fewer contracts. But one contract that people very commonly entered into was a marriage contract, right? And a kiddushin, a marriage contract, is a contract that was a written contract, and a bill of divorce was a written contract. Okay, so what is it that they were not expert in? That Rabbah is saying is a particular element of that law. It's not so much that we're worried that they don't know how to write out the bill of divorce, because actually it's very simple wording that is required for a bill of divorce. But the one law that is a must that people have to understand is there's no such thing as a template, as a generic bill of divorce. A bill of divorce, even though it's expensive and for poor people to get a scribe to write out a contract might be a prohibitive expense, nonetheless, you can't, even though your name is John and your wife's name is Sue, and then you guys get divorced and John gives Sue a bill of divorce, and then they have two friends who are also named John and Sue. And let's imagine even that they have the same last names and their parents had the same names and all the identifying names were the same. So the second John and Sue might say, well, let us save a little money. We'll use your bill of divorce since it's all the same names for our divorce. And the answer is no, you cannot do that. Every bill of divorce has to be written for her sake, meaning the wife who is receiving it. It is not sufficient for a bill of divorce to be written in a technically correct manner. It must also be written for the sake of the man and the woman who are divorcing. Therefore, when the witness comes before the court and says that it was written and signed in his presence, he is testifying that the writing and the signing of the bill of divorce were performed for the sake of the man and woman in question. Now, Rava says a different reason. It is because there are no witnesses available to ratify, right? This is a get that is coming from overseas. So the court can't just summon in the witnesses who were there when the get was written. Now, presumably, one of the witnesses is this agent who is bringing the get. So there's one witness, but do we accept the testimony of one witness to ratify a get? No. Right? The agent is delivering it, but witnesses had to be present when the husband wrote it. Since we can't summon those witnesses easily to this court, now that the get has traveled over an ocean to get here, at the very least, we're going to make this agent who's bringing the get attest that he did witness the writing and the signing of the get, right? Not just the signing, but the writing of the get for this particular couple. Since the bill of divorce was written in a distant place, it is possible that the husband or someone else might later claim that the bill of divorce is a forgery. So for this reason, the agent must say that the bill of divorce was written and signed in his presence, a declaration that bars any subsequent objection on the part of the husband. And the Gemara asks, what is the difference between these two explanations? Right? One, that the people overseas don't know that a get has to be written for a particular couple, and that this is going to, take the place of, whatever other legal guarantee there was that the get was written properly and signed by the husband in the presence of witnesses. That's what this agent is attesting to. So what is the difference between these two explanations of why we have this requirement? What is the practical difference? And the Gemara answers there is a difference between them with regard to a case where two people brought the bill of divorce Now, we do have two agents bringing it, and they were both present when it was written and signed. In this case, two witnesses are available right now in this court, in this country, to ratify the bill of divorce if someone objects to its validity, right? So this would take care of one of the explanations. Alternatively, the difference concerns a case where the agent brings the bill of divorce from one region to another region within the land of Israel. Here, there is no concern that the bill of divorce might not have been written for her sake, as the residents of Eretz Yisroel are aware of this requirement. However, witnesses are not necessarily available to confirm the document, since they would have to travel from far away. Alternatively, there is another understanding of what the differences between these two explanations would be in a case where the agent brings the bill of divorce within that same region in a country overseas, right? So it is local, but both the husband and the wife, or the sender and the recipient, are overseas in the same country, not far apart, but both outside of Eretz Yisroel. So according to the opinion of Rabbah, who says the concern is that the people there might not know that the document must be written for her sake, the problem is equally relevant whether the get is traveling from overseas to Israel or from one side of town to another within a town that is overseas. However, according to the opinion of Rabbah, who says that the reason is because witnesses are not available, if the bill of divorce is brought in the same region, then the witnesses will be available to ratify. And the Gemara asks, and according to the opinion of Rabbah, who said that the reason is because they are not experts in writing a bill of divorce for her sake, let us require two witnesses to testify about this, just as is the case with regard to all testimonies in the Torah. And the Gemara answers, one witness is deemed credible with regard to prohibitions. In other words, if there is uncertainty as to whether a matter is prohibited or permitted, in the case of the heretofore married woman, the testimony of one witness is sufficient. Now understand what they're saying. This woman who is married, right, when she got married, right, when they made Kiddushin. What does Kiddushin mean? It's the same root as Kedusha, holiness. That when a husband and wife, when a man and woman get married, so they enter a sacred and holy state where what happens? They are Kiddush, separated from the rest of the world. They become permitted to each other physically because they have just become prohibited to everyone else in the world, right? Now that there's going to be a divorce, currently the status quo is she's prohibited to every other man in the world. When she receives that bill of divorce, she becomes permitted, right? She's free to marry another man. When she was married, she's prohibited to every man in the world. Now that she's divorced, she becomes permitted to go out and marry again. So in this law of prohibitions, they're saying that the testimony of one witness is deemed sufficient. Now the Gemara asks, one can say that we say one witness is deemed credible with regard to prohibitions in a case such as where there is a piece of fat, and it is uncertain if it is forbidden fat, chelev, and it is uncertain if it is permitted fat, right? In other words, we have a piece of food before us, and we're not sure if this is kosher or not. Right? So a witness can come and say, no, I saw that meat was prepared by a kosher butcher and it was prepared by a kosher chef, and that food is kosher, and that's good enough. You can eat that based on the testimony of one witness. Are we going to say the same about a woman, that if there's a mistake and the bill of divorce is not authentic, and relying on this forged bill of divorce, she goes out and marries another man, and then, so that's adultery. And then if they have a child, God forbid, in that situation, that child is a mamzer who is prohibited to marry any other Jew. It's a catastrophe. So shouldn't we require two witnesses for that? Now, in the situation of the kosher food, in this situation, the piece can be rendered permitted by a single witness, as there is no presumption that it is forbidden. Therefore, as there is an uncertainty, and one witness said it is permitted fat, he is deemed credible. However, here in the case of the married woman, there is a presumption that this woman is forbidden to everyone else, as she is a married woman, a status that she retains until it is established that she has received the bill of divorce. So if so, this is a matter of forbidden sexual relations, And the general principle is that there is no matter of testimony for forbidden sexual relations that can be attested to by fewer than 2 witnesses. How are you going to allow this one agent to say that bill of divorce was written and signed in my presence, and on that, based on that, she's going to become a divorced woman when it is delivered? And so now basically, really, based on the testimony of one witness, he's not the 2 witnesses that signed the get, but he's the one witness who says it was written and signed in my presence, and we're going to allow the divorce based on that and ultimately possibly create a mamzer based on this one witness? How's that possible? And the Gemara answers, Rabba's concern is not equivalent to a case of uncertainty, as most Jewish people are experts in the requirement that a bill of divorce must be written for the woman's sake. That's how we got into this line of thinking. And this is so even according to the opinion of Rabbi Meir, who is generally concerned about a minority in a matter of forbidden sexual relations. Meaning, in this case, Rabbi Meir concedes that one need not be concerned for the minority. It might be that there are judicial scribes that don't know that a bill of divorce can only be written for a particular couple. Maybe there's a scribe who doesn't know that. But we don't have to be concerned for the minority, as ordinary judicial scribes who write bills of divorce are learned in this law and know that a bill of divorce must be written for the woman's sake. And it is the sages, the majority of the rabbis, who required testimony about this matter as an extra precaution, right? This is only an extra precaution that this agent has to make this declaration. But the get was signed in the presence of 2 witnesses. He's just a delivery man. Adding the fact that it was written and signed in his presence is an additional precaution. But we certainly, he's just the mailman, right? He's just the mailman. So it's not that he needs to be one of the witnesses, but what the sages said is, no, he needs to be one of the witnesses, right? He's not just the delivery man. You can't simply give a bill of divorce to a mailman and send it. The person who delivers it actually has to be one of the witnesses. We're not going to go extra on top of that and require that both witnesses be the mailman together, as it were. And here, with regard to this testimony, due to the possibility of desertion, i.e. that she may become like a deserted wife, an aguna, the sages were lenient with her by saying that the agent who brought the bill of divorce is deemed credible, despite the fact that he is a single witness. And this is to prevent women from becoming uncertain of their marital status as a result of the lack of testimony needed to ratify the bill of divorce. So this is similar, not the same at all, but similar to what we saw, right? That a woman can remarry based on the testimony of a single witness who saw that her husband died overseas. Now, she takes a risk that if later the guy shows up, the husband was indeed not dead, and she remarried based on the testimony of a single witness, she's going to have a big problem. She's going to divorce the new husband. She can't marry the old husband. If she had a child, it's a mom's, or it's a huge problem. But, that's going to be very rare that happens because it's such a big consequence, and the woman will investigate unless we have a situation where there simply were not 2 witnesses that her husband died, but at least there was one, we allow her to remarry. Similarly, a little bit, that, the bill of divorce that the husband wrote overseas did have to be written and signed in the presence of 2 witnesses, but only one of them has to actually deliver it to her so that she doesn't end up stuck as an aguna. Now, the Gemara asks, excuse me. The Gemara asks, is this ruling a leniency? Is it a leniency so that she doesn't become a stranded wife? That this guy, has to come and make this declaration that it was written and signed in his presence? Says the Gemara, it is a stringency. Since if you require 2 witnesses to testify with regard to the bill of divorce, her husband cannot come to contest and invalidate it, as his testimony will not be accepted against that of 2 witnesses. However, if only one agent brings the bill of divorce, the husband could later come and contest and invalidate the document. So is this a leniency or a stringency for her? Does this requirement favor her or hurt her? Tune in tomorrow to find out. That's what I've got for us tonight. Sorry for the lack of warning. Let's see if there were any comments or questions. The dafs were just getting so long toward the end of Tractate Sata. We become a little bit unaccustomed to a short daf. We are at the 30-minute mark, and we've got it. Okay, Aoife says, you were born in Sivan, because I mentioned this is my birth month. That just started tonight, Rosh Chodesh Sivan. And you were born in Sivan, says Aoife, the month the Torah was given, and you have made it your mission to spread Talmud, which is a way of spreading Torah. Coincidence? Not likely. Not likely. And Sharon says, but Akko is in Israel. Did I mishear what you said? No. Right? So they said that for the sake of this law, Akko is considered the northern border of Israel. The fact that today, the border extends higher than that, and Akko certainly is a city in Israel, just doesn't seem to change the matter, right? For them, when they were writing in the Talmudic era, that was considered the northern border, and Akko even outside the northern border, in terms of could we rely on the sages, the scribes in that town to reliably know that a get could only be written for a particular woman, and they said that Akko is outside the northern border. The fact that Akko is in Israel today doesn't seem to matter to what they said then. That's what I've got for... Belle, one more question. One of my friends opined that we should teach our children of the importance of choosing a good life partner. We spend so much time teaching our children about other life decisions, such as their college and their profession, but are fairly tight-lipped about marriage. Yes! Wow, what a great point, Belle. Of course we should be teaching them what they should be looking for in a partner. I'll say that our kids have certainly heard it said over and over and over again that charm is deceptive and beauty is vain. All right, only a God-fearing woman shall be praised. I mean, that's part of Eishes Ha that we say on Friday nights. But it's also true. What we say to our kids is, if you want to make a successful marriage, you got to have shared values. It's all about shared values. You've got to have the same goal in creating a home, in creating a marriage, in creating a family. You've got to have similar goals, similar values, right? And that, that flash in the pan, love at first sight, passion, all of that. God willing, it will last, maybe not at the same boiling temperature as in those first days, but really the true love is something you build over time, and that just keeps warming and warming and warming and becoming better and better and better over time. But it requires that shared understanding, shared values, shared goals in building that home together. And I can't agree with Belle more. Absolutely right. As parents, we've got to tell our children to think carefully and to read up on and to make a study of what it is that makes marriage work before you enter marriage, right? So you have that same idea, you have the right idea about why you're getting into it. That's what I've got for us tonight. With God's help, we'll be together again tomorrow night, Sunday, the regular time, 6 p.m. Pacific, for another short daf, and it'll have to be pretty quick because Nina and I have to get to an event afterward, but should be no problem, God willing, to get through that page tomorrow at 6 p.m. Pacific. Have a great night. Have a great week. Have a great month. As we enter now, right now, we're in Rosh Chodesh. We enter the month of Sivan. A good Chodesh, good Vach, good night.